Where have you been since we last saw you on PMI Live?
Where have I been? Sounds like I've been stranded in space. So yeah, I'm Anthony, so senior consultant for PMI. I spend most of my time working on AI training and consulting, kind of designing, delivering, and trying to stay abreast of what is a very fast-changing, quickly evolving sector. As well as that, involved in business analysis and, of course, all of the classic improvement stuff as well. So, been a very busy time, but a very interesting time. And in terms of client work, I've had a really good week actually this week. I've been working with a Formula One team, so helping them again, engineers, IT colleagues, just helping them get their head around AI and just building and testing solutions. So yeah, it's been a fast-paced week. That's the only pun I'll do today. I promise.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Pinky swear.
And also, I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure I believe after having seen the dry run earlier on today, but we'll see how we go. Okay, thanks, Anthony. Great to have you with us, as always. For those of you who have registered, you'll receive the recording of the session as well. And without further ado, Anthony, would you like to reveal all and tell us what you are going to take us through today?
Yeah, sure. So if we can bring the screen share up. Thank you, producer Jamil. So yeah, in this session, I want to talk about agents, so AI agents. 2025, so last year, was described as being the year when this kind of took off, this agentic AI future, and it's been a buzzword for that year. Now we're halfway through 2026, we're seeing it's not hype, and actually we've seen it in clients, we've seen it internally. AI agents are where we go beyond just having kind of the Google on steroids, and now we're actually looking at our processes and we're starting to almost create a digital set of colleagues, really. So we're going to talk about that today. What are they? How to use them? And how do you get the most out of them, I guess?
Yeah, and just coming back before you start, Anthony, to my point around the participation this afternoon, we're really keen. We use these sessions as well as sharing learning and thoughts. We're also really keen to get a temperature and what's your reflections. What's this like? How's this resonating in your organization, in your sector? Is this where you're at right now? Because based on the responses we've got a wide representation of industries here. And it'd be really interesting to get a gauge of how's this looking in your world.
Yeah, well, on that note, I think great place to start is with asking where people are, I guess, right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really keen to just get a feel for how much progress these organizations have made so far.
Okay, great. So Jamil's going to put the poll on screen in a moment. Before we do that, I'll just take you through the questions. So we're asking about your experience, first of all, and you've got 5 choices from never heard of them right through to being an agent expert. Select one of those when the poll appears, and we'll get a feel for who's here. Jamil, if you could launch that poll, please, that'd be great. There we go. That should be on screen for you guys now. And we've got a real Anglicism there for those who are joining us from overseas. Dabbled means experimented. It's I was going to say Yorkshire for experimenting, but I'm not sure that's true. But it's certainly an Anglicism. So yes, that's what that means. So number 4 is I've experimented with agents. Okay, so I can see some responses coming in. You'll be pleased to know, Anthony, with your dabbling coming in second place. And answer number 3 being I know what they are, but haven't had any experience with them. That's interesting. Okay. So I'm going to ask you the almost impossible question. Does that match with your expectations, Anthony?
Yeah, it actually really does. We were talking about this morning, and yeah, we've been, again, clients across a lot of different sectors, very, very diverse sectors as well. And that's very, very typical. It's, we've heard of them, but what are they? How do we do them? Are they really technical? We don't know. Okay,
excellent. So the only one we've got no response on is agent expert, which is, I was going to say a good thing. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It's an interesting thing. But we've got lots of openness there. So let's learn some stuff then on that basis.
Yeah. And as a kind of segue, I think it is a good thing, and I think it's a realistic thing. There are truly few, because this is such a new technology. I think anyone who feels that they're an expert, the week later may immediately not. But I guess best place to start is right at the beginning. What do we mean by an agent? And when we're thinking about artificial intelligence or human intelligence for that matter, we're thinking about this generalizability, right? So we've got access to this magic, almost person in a box somewhere who we can ask a question and they'll give us a generally reasonable human level answer back. But it can feel like it's dragging someone in off the street. So especially when you're using Copilot, it's like dragging someone in off the street and saying, hey, help me with my job. And if you think about yourself in your day job, 9 times out of 10, it's not really going to be helpful, because you sat there thinking, well, I'd have to explain so much context. It's very difficult to just drag someone off the street and assign them a task. And you can do a thought experiment. You can do a game in your head almost to prove this point. You can take a really trivial, a really simple seeming task like making a cheeseburger, and you can say, that is a simple generalized task, generalizes well across the human population. In other words, most people, I would assume listening to this, would say, yeah, I can make a cheeseburger. A cheeseburger is a simple thing. I can picture it, the bread, the meat, the cheese. But if you ask them something a bit more specific, still quite trivial, but a bit more specific, yeah, but could you make a Big Mac specifically? And we ask this whenever we train people, when we're training them on agents. We always get the same answer, which is, maybe, I'm not sure. There's this kind of lost look on the face. And you ask a question like, well, how many slices of cheese in a Big Mac? And people say, it's 2, isn't it? And I always like to correct them and say the answer is 1. It's actually 1. Everyone thinks it's 2, but you're thinking of the 2 burgers and the extra piece of bread. Without getting lost on Big Mac, the point here is, even for something simple like this, if we want to be able to do that repeatably and reliably within the organization that makes Big Macs, we need some extra information of various types and flavors and a few extra things, right? So I've listed some ideas here of what you might need to go beyond I can make a cheeseburger and into I can make a Big Mac. And the thing is, really, artificial intelligence is no different. It's a model. It will give a reasonable answer to a question. But again, to get it to do that specific thing at your work, in your role, we need to codify these pieces of information. So we say we have a model, that model of intelligence, and then we have some instructions, some knowledge, and if we really want to unlock the value, eventually it'll be almost obvious to us that we want to imbue this thing with the ability to act, to intervene, to save things, open things, do things in the organization. So that's the principle behind agentics. Agentic means it's not just something that sounds general, it's tuned to a specific situation and often can take action. It doesn't have to, but often it's associated with the ability to act and get involved in the process.
Okay, and I'll just add to a slight flavour to that as well. From an improvement practitioner point of view, we see agents as being a key tool in standardization, in process standardization, making processes capable and repeatable. They've got a really interesting key role to play there. It's interesting. We've got a comment there in the chat that supports that. Actually, just brought it to mind. There's a participant here saying it's lots of opportunities for using agents instead of multiple prompts, but have not built any yet. Now, there's a great case of standardization in and of itself, because you imagine devolving a process that did require multiple prompts. One of the advantages of agents is enabling those prompts to be standardized, repeatable by multiple process operators. So what we're trying to do here is shift the narrative away from the AI solutions, and particularly agents, being a separate thing. Start to see and look for opportunities to build them into your processes as you redesign and improve them.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the enemy of processes is variation. Mm-hmm. And, it's at the heart of what we at PMI, work with clients to help wrestle and get under control, is that variation. And there's two things to consider here, because AI is a novel and new source of potential variation. Anyone who's asked a prompt twice has seen this. And B, therefore, when we're implementing these agents, what we're trying to really target is repeatability. So I wanted to walk through a very quick example of what an agent can look like in the real, in fact, does look like in the real world. And if the weather is well, we'll actually demo it live. But I thought it best to start, before we get into a work-related example, something nice and almost personal that anyone could picture. So this is a real one. It's one of the first agents I ever developed. Actually, it was outside of work. So I have this biological intelligence. I call him Jake. I've been raising him for more than 8 years now, training him. And as part of his training with the school, he's assigned, like all kids are, a list of spelling words. Now, I used to sit down and write out fill in the blank sentences. It could take up to an hour to do this, to try and help him learn them. But with AI, obviously, there's an opportunity here. But the key is it's a repeatable opportunity. I'm going to get 10 new words every week. So it's almost like I want to write out a prompt that can magically convert 10 English words into the best possible set of fill in the blank sentences. But I need somewhere I can kind of save that prompt so I can just invoke it each week when needed without having to type all of that out again. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to create an agent, and I'm literally in a text box. I'm going to write out a set of instructions, and it will start with the obvious things like you can see on screen here, I want you to help my son with his homework. He's a boy, he's 8 years old. But then I go into quite a lot of granular detail on, his likes, his dislikes. He likes Sonic the Hedgehog and Lord of the Rings, and he likes this and he likes that. And I promise those aren't the things I like that I've made him like. I do promise that. So I list all of these out, and also the practical things like one of the things I learned very early testing this is you have to be very explicit on how long do you want the fill in the blanks to be. He's got big handwriting. He's a small child, so need to keep them at a certain size. All of this gets codified, and that can sound like a lot of work, and it is, admittedly. But there's two big benefits to this. The first one is the obvious one. I now have the ability, once that's saved, to provide a prompt or two. Let's just start with provide a prompt or two or three. And each of these prompts could just be 10 words in English, right? So it could be 10 words with the letter C, week 1, 10 words with the letter D, week 2, etc. But each time I put in one of these prompts to my agent, it's going to follow those same instructions. I'm going to get repeatable results. But the second benefit is in articulating my situation and my problem so precisely, if I ever need to change anything, as he's growing older, I can just change that number. As his likes and dislikes change, I have this place now where I can just kind of, as if it were a team member, keep it updated, keep it in the loop, and it never kind of goes obsolete. So there's those two big benefits to not just having the agent, but having the mentality of maintaining it as well. The other really cool thing that you can do with these basic agents is you can give them reference knowledge, right? So I can say, hey, here's a Word document with a school homework template. Make your output look like this. And then it's something that my son would recognize. So it's that repeatable, reliable result, but that's targeted. So we're minimizing variation with a very precise statement of the problem. And that will sound familiar to any improvement practitioner.
Indeed, Anton. You know what this example, just before you go on to it, showing us struck me as well is in process design. I've many times I've come across people describing certain tasks such as this that may not happen every day, but say it's once a week, and but it's just I'll just do it because it's just easier that I just do it myself. And what this struck me as a good example of is actually using the improvement tools to measure that time that's taken. You can demonstrate the benefit of agentizing this, such a process, and seeing, is it worth it? And that's a genuine question. And that's the beauty of this stuff. In a lot of cases, it's low cost experimentation. So you can see if it's worth it. Do the before and after, measure the results, whatever those attributes are that you're looking at, to demonstrate whether it's worth it. And that gets away from the age-old problem of technology for technology's sake, and it being too late because we've already implemented the system. That's one of
Absolutely.
the real advantages here. This is a gift to the improvement practitioner because you can experiment at relatively low cost with radical technology solutions without it costing the earth.
Absolutely. And the final piece to the puzzle becomes action. Once we've got that, we've got all of that worked out, having it do some intervention. So I'm going to show you what that looks like now, the actions associated with this agent. Effectively, there's two. First of all, I take a screenshot of the spellings for this week, and I take them, if you're interested, from Google Classroom, just a screenshot, and then I save them into a folder in my OneDrive. So, action. When a file is saved in OneDrive, take the information and turn it into, run this prompt, create the sentences, yes, but then another action, take that and actually format it, make it look nice, put it in a nice Word document for me to print. And so 3 minutes later, magically, this is what I get. With a nice handy table with some emojis to help him kind of learn the spellings, and then these really tailored, well thought through fill in the blank sentences. And just as a treat, if technology allows, we thought we'd have a bit of fun and actually just test this live for you. So here is an empty folder. And we had the fun idea of taking, if everyone can see this, if it opens, taking this screenshot. Might just be worth zooming in. And eagle-eyed people may spot that these probably aren't words suitable for a 9-year-old to learn, but actually you can see what we've done here. They're improvement themed. So it might be a bit of a kind of a laugh to see what my agent does to try and get my 9-year-old to learn these words.
So just to be clear, Anthony, what you've done is taken a screenshot of, I think there's 10 there, is there? 10 words?
10, yeah, 10 words.
And you're going to drop that into the OneDrive folder, and you've written an agent that reads that OneDrive folder and executes the homework task to generate the sentences when a new file is added.
Indeed. So in a few minutes' time, I'll drag this back on screen, hit refresh, and we should magically see our output. In the meantime, it's worth just quickly talking through a little bit about how we actually go about this. Because as he said at the beginning, Rich, what's important is having a structured and, again, repeatable approach. So just going to talk for a little bit about how we put PDSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act, at the heart of this AI experimentation. And really, we're just going to split it into 3 phases: evaluation, recruitment, and testing. Starting with the evaluation phase, what we always do, both internally and when we're training clients, is we say begin this whole journey by clarifying the process context and producing a test, or proposing a testable theory. So in other words, you sat there and you're thinking, oh, I wonder if AI could do this for me. Let me start just writing out the magic spell, and then you kind of get lost. There's a better way. Instead, just go back to those process principles, that process thinking, and think through, well, what is the process? And we're going to have a look at an example later on. But what is this process? What's going on here? What is the problem? Do all of that normal process thinking. And if you can, you will find you've already got 75% of a great prompt written. And we'll demonstrate this a little bit later on. But once we've got that, and once we've got our testable theory, the advice we give is to really put on your your HR hat rather than your IT hat. And what we mean by that is, if we were to treat this like shortlisting candidates, interviewing, assessing, onboarding, providing support, just those first 2 steps, right? Everyone knows. Let's just take Copilot. You can open Copilot in the web, you can open it in Excel. You get slightly different options, slightly different things that might happen. We've all experienced this, and it can be a bit overwhelming. We encourage you to flip that on its head. Treat this like an interview process. And again, maybe in your organization, you've got multiple tools you can try. Maybe you're in an organization where they offer Claude, or they've got an internal version of ChatGPT, something like that. Rather than being paralyzed by questions, again, treat it like an interview question. Take that prompt, that proto prompt that you've got, and just see, what results am I getting back? And once you get a feel for what's working well, and you will, we've seen this with clients, that's when we can move into the structured testing and studying, really treating it like a Kaizen sometimes, maybe having some fellow process operators with you who understand the ins and outs and can help you with the context. So this is the model that we follow, and we've seen it work pretty well with a whole range of clients and internally.
Yeah, indeed. And, I think this is, again, a great example, Anthony, of the method that I was referring to earlier on, applying the trusted tools to new and different contexts and settings.
Mm.
And again, they'll just flag the risk we're seeing here with clients is jumping straight to solutions. I don't think that's any different to any other environment, but it's particularly noticeable in AI settings because you get results so quickly. You need to do this thinking first of all, but again, let me repeat myself, doesn't mean going slowly. That's not the alternative.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, how do we go fast? Because I know those listening to this might be saying, "Well, that's great. Now, can we get specific? Can we get hands-on? How do you do this? How do I get past these seeming hurdles that I'm seeing?" Well, the first place to start is by understanding what tools we need to use, and it's not that complex really. Most of us are used to using things like, again, Gemini, ChatGPT, Copilot. We know what the AI looks like. But what I thought would be useful to do today is more think of this like having a knife and a fork. And up to now, you've only had a fork. And if you've only got a fork, you can eat a meal, right? You can cut food with a fork. It's just not often very effective. And that's what it's like trying to get Copilot to both do automation and intelligence at the same time. But to make it super crystal clear, let me show you, let me give you an example of this. So I'm going to say, here's a prompt. And this prompt is our equivalent of cutting the food with the fork. So what we've done is we've asked Copilot, can you extract the table from this spreadsheet, which presumably we've uploaded? Can you extract a table from this spreadsheet and put a summary of it into this PowerPoint presentation I'm working on? Now it sounds reasonable, but it won't work. Or it is very likely to probably fail. It's not going to do one or all of those things very well. And really, of the many things that we could improve about this prompt, the first place to start is separating out the automation from the AI, the intelligence from the doing, the what can the machine say, the intelligence, versus what can the machine do, which is the automation. And the automation, is where we get our knife in the analogy, the second piece of cutlery, where both are required to eat the meal effectively and repeatably. So first, just to show how we would fix this prompt and what we should really be doing with our fork. Here's a table of data, and I want you to produce a summary in the following way. And you're really focusing now as an AI practitioner on describing, a bit like with the spelling homework, in atomic detail, what is it you want out of this summary? And you test it. I also encourage, when people are doing this, that you do the summary yourself first. So you've got that gold standard, you have that baseline to test back what the AI is showing you, right? And again, you might be doing a bit of recruitment, you might test it in a few different places. But once you're happy with it, now you can move on to the knife. Once you've got the food with the fork, now we can get the knife, right? You wouldn't try to slice with a knife before you've got the fork in. That's hopefully the analogy I want people to take away from this.
Okay, so, we're with you.
You're slicing this up with tools like Power Automate or Copilot Studio. Again, we won't get lost in the tech, but there are automation platforms. They're not intelligent in the sense that they can talk to you about feelings like ChatGPT can, but what they will do is work through process steps very robotically. But if we bring these two things together, they work really well. We can say on a Monday at 5 p.m., send an automated request to Copilot. And then it becomes obvious, well, what request? That one you worked out, we want to send that. And then when the AI produces its response, we'll have that platform just hoover in that text and place it into the spreadsheet, which is a bit like what you saw me doing with the spelling homework. Because by magic, now that we've waited a couple of minutes, we now have very inappropriate spelling homework for an 8 to 9-year-old, just given the types of words they are. But let's go and have a little look at the what it's come up with. Sonic Speed Shoes got a huge something after Tails fitted them with a brand new turbo engine. What do you think, Rich? Which of our improvement words?
Oh, on the spot. Let's go upgrade. I'd upgrade on that one. Although
Yeah,
I'd be desperate to find the use of a possible use for the word betterment, to be quite honest.
Well, but the point is, the system works. So we've gone from what can the machine say to what can the machine do, brought them together for now repeatable, reliable results that are personally delivering me an hour back of my life every week and helping my son learn and grow.
So, Anthony, let's just be clear with what's happened here then. So from that
Yeah.
screenshot, your agents run the prompts that you've predefined, and it's produced the summary. So let's take a look at the summary. And it's done two things here, which you will have pre-told it to do. Explain the words is part one, yeah?
Yeah, that's part one.
And add these emojis of various types. Okay, so for example, a development there that you're highlighting. It's taken the word that you gave it a screenshot of the image. That's produced a definition of it. So the process of growing, building, or creating something new. Let's run with that. Okay. And then part two is it's generated an exercise based on your predefined criteria and context. So likes, dislikes, etc., age, etc. And it's generated those sentences with the blanks. And the exercise for Jake here is to choose one of those words and put put them into the sentence. And rightly so, someone's picked up that you've optimized your agent for US spelling. I quite agree. Is that correct?
Do you know, I could change that with a few clicks. Indeed. And I probably will after this. Thank you.
And there's context in action, huh?
Yep. There's always refinements you need to make. I'm always honest about this. There are always refinements to be made.
So has Jake registered any complaints that he keeps getting bad marks in this spelling test because of the
I can tell you what he does complain about. No, I can tell you what he does complain about, though. He complains about when the lore of these fictional universes is not respected by the AI. So he says, no, Sonic doesn't have upgraded shit. He's incensed by that.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so looking at these examples as well, that's interesting. So it's gone really specific. Great.
Yeah. So just to summarize then, so what have we learned? Well, we can bust a few myths maybe at this point. The first one is, just thinking about what is an AI agent. Is it this thing where I sort of train my own AI model? And no. In some ways, it's much more disappointing than that, I guess. But no, it's actually simpler and easier than that. It's just a saved prompt, really. It's a saved prompt with some kind of automations around it. And it sounds really kind of trivial when you say it that way, but when you actually unlock the potential of it at home in your organizations, that's what's causing, I was talking to a client about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I think they said they've seen a 6-fold improvement in their ability to deliver their internal projects. So things that were taking them, 3 years were literally being done in a matter of months. And this is across multiple projects, and it's a sustained improvement, and it's all down to agentics.
Okay, that's interesting. We had a similar thing. We're doing some analysis on our website. We've got a chat bot that has an AI agent working behind the scenes with it. So the principal purpose of that chat bot is to help customers as quickly as possible. In the instructions for that agent, we've explicitly told it your job is not to prevent customers from contacting real human beings. So it's to provide information quickly and explicitly not, which is not always the case in many customer service environments. They deliberately set out to try and get customers to self-serve for some of the right reasons some of the time. In our case, we specified your job is to get through to people as quickly as possible. So it does seek to serve and answer questions, and we see all the data coming back. It is doing that most of the time pretty effectively. One of the repeatable things we put into that agent is to pick up on safeguarding prompts. So with our apprenticeship business, we've got safeguarding obligations and policies and processes. If someone mentions safeguarding, the agent is programmed to bypass all normal rules and immediately present the contact details for the safeguarding team. whatever else is going on. But it's about this point about repeatability that you made, Anthony, and that's what that's about. And it's not a particularly complex model. It's reading our websites, reading all of our policy documents, and giving answers based on it. And if someone appears to be not satisfied with the answers, or if they ask, it puts them straight through to a human being to talk to, with exception, and that's why I'm mentioning this, safeguarding, go through to, give contact details. And it gives us confidence that people, when they need it, are getting the right answers.
Yes, and that's the key. It's that last bit, whenever we're training people, that's particularly what leaders are looking for. It's the confidence. How do I get over this nervousness of putting this into my processes? And yeah, that's the answer. Careful experimentation so that we prove the concept repeatably. So let's just bring this into the workspace. Still going to keep the example, the use case, really simple, really low level, purely because the most people maybe viewing this will be able to identify with it. They'll be able to see it. So nothing more complex than the last agent we showed you, but just now in a work situation. And we're going to turn to myself, again, weaponizing a little bit of laziness, which is, it's not really, that's the joke. So, which is the idea of having an email inbox that's overflowing. And it's not about weaponizing laziness in reality. What it's about is, if you've got many things that are of a very different nature from a demand point of view. So for myself, I've got, clients, new and existing. I've got learners of different types, apprentices versus non-apprentices, internal colleagues of all different types. And I know this isn't unique to me, by the way. I'm not saying I'm special. As I said, this is something everyone will recognize. But the point is, again, to provide the right information to these people and to be able to prioritize effectively, I need help. So follow the process. We begin with some process thinking. Anyone who's been involved with improvement thinking will recognize this sort of template that I'm showing on screen as looking vaguely like a SIPOC, very similar types of things, maybe something like a SIPOC mixed with a project charter. And that's deliberate because it is exactly that. We start by thinking about the process name. And again, this situation, let's just keep it simple, keep it quick. Let's just say our process is sharing information. So we've got our IT systems and the people or humans who are supplying us with questions, and we've got our process customers. We've got our colleagues, we've got clients, potential clients, whoever it might be. What's really helpful is to just take a step back before you jump into, well, what does the prompt need to, how am I going to do? Actually, let's just think about a couple of really important things. First, the customer's expectations. What are we looking to get out of this? So we want to be responsive, we want to be available, we want to share accurate information. And in terms of sources of variation in the process, well, there's going to be, as we said, a lot of variation in where it's come from, but also things like the format, the attachments, the topics. If I want something to help me categorize, classify, prioritize, I'm going to have to think about those things. And of course, what are the key connected process? We want to think systemically, what else might this be connected to? And, for myself, it's kind of a lot of those processes internally, from generating demand to, onboarding customers. You can picture this for yourself. You could have a whole different raft of internal processes you tend to connect with. Okay, so again, following process thinking, just take a second and maybe refine our first thought. Can AI help me better sort my emails? Let's now refine that down into a problem statement. Let's say, get a lot of emails, different topics, large variation in priority and response needs. Categorizing them can take a lot of time. Now, look, I know this is super basic, right? And we've done that deliberately. Pick a nice, easy example to follow. But the point is, just looking on screen already, for anyone who's maybe experimented a little bit with prompting, you're seeing the seeds and the soil of a prompt. You're seeing the things to be considered and included in the prompt. You're seeing some of the text from the prompt in there that we'll eventually use. But before we do it, as I said, we just want to make sure we've proposed that testable theory, so we can come back to that 3-question model and we can say, right, what are we trying to achieve? Pre-sort and categorize emails. Right, and when I did this for real, I thought about maybe some auto reply, and I thought, no, let's start simple, start with the basics. Let's pre-sort, categorize some emails, monitor my inbox in real time. So how am I going to know a change is an improvement? Well, when my emails are appearing automatically in my Outlook with categories assigned, and that they're accurate.
And of course, you could go further with that, couldn't you? I save therefore 20 minutes or whatever
Yes.
A day, and try and put some numbers and measures against that. It depends on the context. You know, that Anthony's giving a general example here, a relatable example, I should say.
Yes, absolutely. And then for what can we try to do to improve then? Well, in this situation, we as a Microsoft organization, you'd say, hey, you could probably trial setting up an agent. If you want this agent to have actions, probably going to use a tool like Copilot Studio. And I'll just show a snapshot of this is a simplified, maybe sanitized view of the prompt that I originally came up with for this. And again, super simple example, so we can track it, I know. But the roots of everything you're seeing on screen came from the SciPoc. And again, when we train this out, when I'm delivering or helping test and refine solutions with clients, this is always where we start, and it always helps. It always speeds up the process. So, quick question would be, or the next question, sorry, would be, how difficult then is it to actually do this and add the actions? Like, do you need to sort of write computer code? Like, how do you do this? So I think it's worth showing you. We'll show you under the hood. We'll just very quickly give you some screenshots so you can see what this looks like. And of course, step one is to take that prompt I just showed you and put it somewhere, save it. We save it in a text box. We press save. And therefore, technically, we're going to give this a little green stamp and say, you don't need to be technical to do that. Step two, we give our agent some tools. And again, in the Power Platform, and I know the same is true in Google Workspace, this has been designed in a way that's called kind of low code, no code. In other words, again, green stamp. You get a drop-down list of tools, and they're all very intuitively named. So for this, my tool is assigning Outlook categories to emails, logical. And my trigger is when a new email applies, again, logical. Now, in the interest of honesty, after this point is where a little bit of technical skill, a little bit of technical know-how is required. So, if you're thinking about, for example, the AI and automation apprenticeship that you might have seen at the beginning of the podcast, that's the kind of thing that we'd be learning in that space. It's just this next bit, which is, once we've set this up, we then manage something like this. It's kind of a process flow that shows all of the steps that are going on. And then each of those steps, you need to click into it and kind of say configure it. So say, for when a new email arrives, there's a box, you go in and you say, well, which email account? What kinds of emails? All emails from everyone? And again, yes, you need to be a little bit more technically versed, open to that technical side of developing something, just to make sure you've got that right. A little bit of knowledge about how SharePoint works goes a huge amount of a distance, for example. So that's what it looks like under the hood. And the result, again, just to make it super satisfying, is this. So I get emails, before I've even read them, as you can see, that categorized according to those categories you saw on screen. And again, it works about 85% of the time. Again, being honest, works about 85% of the time. And just leaving the human in the loop then, and there, again, an explicit instruction which says if you're not sure, don't categorize it. And that, makes it easier for me to just catch any errors.
It comes with a health warning that be very careful on sharing if you do develop one for your inbox like this with categories. Be very careful on who you share it with, and sensitive to the audience that you're sharing with, because they may see how you've categorized them.
Yeah, and the one point I really do want to drive home is that this middle one here, the learnings can now be applied to other processes. So while this might seem trivial, okay, Anthony, so that probably saves you a few minutes a week. It's probably so small it wouldn't be worth trying to measure it or put it in a control chart. However, if we've got inboxes where actually that upfront triage and categorization is quite critical, how valuable is it having folks in the organization who know how to set this kind of thing up? We did it here, now we can apply it there.
Yeah.
So, to summarize then, the overall journey of agentization. First step, identify an opportunity. So 2 key lessons. Opportunities can be hidden in plain sight. Even things as little as the one I just demonstrated can lead to bigger things. And it involves a little bit about knowing the art of the possible. So, again, yeah, it's worth experimenting, playing with these tools in and out of work, just to build up an understanding of the kinds of things that are possible, right? And that's fine. That's a very good thing to do. But once we come to look at process improvement, we're back to having an approach. And again, we've looked at this: evaluate, recruit, test, and study. And again, my one shout out, just a reminder in there, is the thing that makes that loop work well is having done the work yourself once. And the number of times I'll see someone sit down to, say, hey, generate a summary of this table, and they press enter and they go, Anthony, I don't like it. And I say, well, what would good have looked like? And they go, well, I'm not really sure, but not that.
Yep.
Yeah, and
exactly.
You think, you got no chance.
And we're back to that standardization, isn't it? Of pushing out, go use AI, folks. Okay, well, how do we build that into our processes so it's repeatable and standardized? Okay, so we have got time for questions, folks, so do keep them coming in. Before we do that, I've put, Anthony was making reference to the SIPOC, that he was structuring those prompts around for the emails, and I've put 2 things into the chat. I've put a template, a downloadable template for SIPOC in there, and also an excellent episode of our Uncommon Sense podcast, which is why your process needs a SIPOC. That's with from a couple of years ago with our colleague Barry Byrne, who looks like he's doing a dance on the front page there. I'm sure he'd be pleased with that. Not sure if you're with us today, Baz, but anyway, nice dancing. Let's come back to, if you could just go back to your previous slide, Anthony, that'd be great. Yeah. We've got a question in response to my comment around our agent on safeguarding. I had a question in there. Say, does that include if someone refers to safeguarding in an oblique way, or do they need to mention the keyword literally? So, because it is a large language model agent and not automation, if it were automation, it would respond to that keyword and that keyword alone. Because it's a large language model agent, I am very pleased to say I ran this quick experiment, which I'll put into the chat, an image thereof, where I've asked the chatbot on our website. I simply said, I didn't mention the word safeguarding. I said, I'm concerned about a learner on my course. And because it has learned, it's pulled the and-on cord, bypassed all of its other logic, and said, if you have a safeguarding concern or need to report one, please contact our safeguarding team at. And then it's gone further and said, would you like to report that directly now? Yes or no? So that's an example of we haven't set that criteria up. We put in the prompt around what might be a safeguarding concern, and if someone wants to register a safeguarding matter, and it's learned to interpret the content that people are prompting it with against that. So great example. Be careful with that stuff though, because it does need, and so it was a great question that someone asked, because you do need to put that through multiple testing scenarios. Because we've got the human interlink on this that it puts through to a human, we felt it was safe to do that, and it would be a right side failure rather than a wrong side failure. If it didn't pick up on the safeguarding prompt, it would put you through to a human anyway, and then the human could interpret it. That was our logic with it. Okay, so we've got a question here from Jim. Thanks for the question, Jim. What are the limits of what something like a Copilot agent can interact with? E.g., does it have to be something within the Microsoft ecosphere, or is it going to stumble on something like SAP SuccessFactors? Oh, my favorite SuccessFactors. So, Anthony?
I'm thinking of the inverse square law here. And what I mean by that is the direct answer to your question is you can kind of do anything if you're willing to experiment with technology. However, your sense in that question is bang on, which is to get quick, repeatable, reliable results, it's optimized for the Microsoft ecosystem, right? So you can connect to SharePoint easily. You can connect to all of those Microsoft things. You can do Microsoft actions, be it send team messages or anything you could do yourself as a Microsoft user. Now you can connect via different types of connectors to other sorts of platforms and services, your CRM system, this, that, the other. Yeah. What you tend to find with kind of almost the inverse square law is the further away you get from Microsoft, the more you start encountering random charges for things like API calls. And won't go into the technical detail, but yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, indeed. And there are a list, as with all of the agent platforms, there's a list of, with each one, a list of predefined connectors, they're called. Yep. Everything from other automation platforms, such as Zapier, rather than using Microsoft Power Automate. Mm-hmm. Salesforce is in there a lot. And one of the advantages we've got coming into the AI age is that particularly the European Union has challenged a lot of the big tech vendors over the years of locking out competitors from platforms. And you may have picked up on the relative openness of some of the AI solutions. And that's because they've had to pay, many of the tech vendors have had to pay very big fines in the past. So they're trying to be careful not to develop monopoly-based platforms that can be challenged and then end up embroiled in years. So starting way back when the EU challenged Microsoft over its pre-installation of Windows, and they ended up the pre-installation of Internet Explorer on Windows. And they ended up paying over many, many years a very big settlement on that. So tangible examples of that is things like Claude, which is Anthropic's large language model AI platform and agent builder. You can add an add-in for free into all Microsoft applications. Claude can read SharePoint. And it's not a Microsoft product, but it is built in there, and it's a direct response to that. They're trying to navigate that world carefully to avoid the challenges of there's other jurisdictions throughout the world, but the EU have been particularly aggressive on it to make sure that you can connect. So my point is, in answer to the question, the list is sure to grow. And we're seeing that in a lot of the agent work that we're doing. The list of predefined connectors is growing and growing and growing. But back to where Anthony started on the subject of you can connect to anything. We use agents and automation with several systems that don't have connectors, and we just extract the data and read the data. And we read that in classic databases, SQL databases, Azure databases. And agents are able to read that because it's just data. So there might be a level, and particularly with something like SuccessFactors, there'll be an output in there, and you can almost certainly read it. In fact, we are doing for one of our clients. So yeah, very happy to talk around challenges like this at any point. Okay, what we've got here. I found the spelling automation mind-blowing, Anthony. Do you have any more complex real-world examples that you can share at all? There, you're on the spot on a Friday afternoon, Anthony. Come on then.
Yeah, sure. So here's a workflow in Zapier, which begins actually its life as a PDF. I take my bank statement and I save it into OneDrive. I'm addicted to saving things into OneDrive to trigger workflows. So what happens here is that an agent automatically every month is going to, first of all, well, the first step is actually have an agent that converts it into Excel and makes it readable. Then this workflow will pick up automatically and it will go on a loop through every single line item that I spent, and it will use its artificial intelligence to categorize them. So, there's food and drink, there's this, there's that. But wait, there's more. Once that's finished, it's automatically added to a database of all my historic transactions, also likewise categorized. From there, a team of agents stands up, 3 of them. The first agent's job is to look at what I spent in that most recent month and summarize it. Then an agent goes and looks at the previous months before that summary and gives me the deltas. Then a third agent takes the output from both of those, checks it for errors, gives me some financial advice, and sends it in a lovely little email to me by Outlook. So that would be taking things up to what I would call medium rare. I won't go well done because we'd be here till the evening and it's frankly almost the weekend. But I hope that helps.
That does help. That's brilliant. And, it's interesting. One of the things I find really useful is contextualizing these challenges. It's this abstract text that everyone's telling you, bang, bang, bang. You've got to do this stuff. You've got to do this stuff. And that you can seeing practical, relatable examples really helps. And take that away, folks, if you don't already, in your improvement roles of explaining this stuff to other people in your organizations. Because frankly, to a lot of people, it's scary as hell. So do take these practical real world examples. And that's what I find so powerful about illustrating my starting point about value add. Where can these products add value to people's work, to your processes, to your organizations, rather than this rather misunderstood concept of it's coming for your jobs? Actually, yeah, it is. It's coming to enhance your jobs, to enable you to do the stuff that humans need to do. And that's why diligence with this stuff matters so much.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Right, we've got a few minutes just for another question. Let me just read that. So I work in a large organization that doesn't have the most robust data management infrastructure. Imagine that. And there is concern around embedding AI into processes based on information that we may have available in our tenancy. Okay, common setting. There is a reasonable concern that an AI agent may read an out-of-date document that someone has in a team somewhere, and which AI is able to read without the document owner realizing and therefore giving incorrect information. Fixing that is a huge ongoing job. How would you look to advise on implementing this with a kind of agent for a small work area with all that in mind, without having to wait for the entire data infrastructure to be revamped? So I'm going to go first, if I may, Anthony.
Yeah, sure.
Tell the agent exactly that, because that is a damn good prompt you've written there, Thomas. If you give it that context and tell it to be cautious because that might be the situation, that's the point Anthony was making earlier on with, summarize this data in a spreadsheet. If you tell your agent to just summarize the data and go and read these documents, it will do what your risk will come to life. If you prompt in the way that you've described there and describe the risks to it and then test that it's responding to them, you're in a much safer place and you don't need to. And you see that with a lot of the large language models are improving massively with their learning. And we haven't found one that isn't effective in that way. When you tell it, though, you must do the legwork. Anthony, anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to build on it, even further, use the AI then not to leverage the data, but to fix the data. I was actually dealing with a situation the other evening where I had a very unstructured spreadsheet, and just to give you one facet of it, picture a column where it says a person's name, but actually it's a free text column. So as you look down the thousands of records, my colleague Damien appears as Damien, Damian, Damion, Damien A, Damien Albinson, and all the variations in between. Now, that's hallucination central for an AI in terms of, hey, give me some insights on the spreadsheet. So guess what my prompt was? Hey, look through column E. I want you to give me a plan for each of the names you see, how would you deduplicate this? And it gave me a matrix. I'd put Damien A, and they'd all go into Damien. I'd put WK, Warren, Wazza, and Warren Knight all into Warren Knight. Do you want me to proceed? Yes. And it's a step-by-step process because I've got a lot of columns, but it just shows the AI is still useful. You just turn what it's, doing into the fix.
Absolutely. Okay, I can see we've got some more questions coming in. Jamil, could you screenshot those for me? And Anthony and myself will come back to everyone and share those answers. Okay, could you jump onto the final slides for me, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. Okay, I mentioned our podcast series. A couple of months ago, we launched Gamification. This month's episode is Phil Knowles, who is from the UK electronics retailer Currys. Gamification is about the good, the bad, and the ugly of practical improvement. Hear the war stories, hear what worked and what didn't work. Really honest stories. 3 episodes available so far, available on all the popular podcast platforms. And finally, Anthony, the final slide is next month's PMI Live, which is, I am delighted to say, episode 125. It's improvement projects in the real world, aka the mistakes that will cost you months and possibly pounds/dollars or any other currency of your choosing. Do join us on Friday, the 26th of June, the final Friday of every month, 1500 hours UK time. You can register now at pmi.co.uk. I'd like to close by thanking everyone for their attention, their participation, and coming and joining us in these. It is both our privilege and our pleasure to deliver these sessions to you. And I hope that does come across, because genuinely we love having you with us and we love the challenges that you set. Look out for the Voice of the Customer survey and let us know on the final question what you would like us to cover in the future PMI Lives. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.